Hello and welcome to this module where I'm going to be introducing Microsoft Excel. The way I teach is very practical. I'm not going to be wasting your time trying to show you this is what this button means and this is what this button does, but I'm going to jump straight and teach you how to do something useful in Excel. So we are going to build a document, and as we build that document, I'm going to be showing you at each stage the various features of Excel. So in other words, I'm not just going to go theoretically demonstrating the different features, but we are going to have a target of what we'd like to do, and as we are doing it, I will then show you all the features of Excel that are used for creating that document. I have in front of me here a document which is my personal income and expenditure budget. So this is the document that we are going to be creating as I am teaching you. So at the end of the next few modules, you are going to have created for yourself a document that looks exactly like this. Firstly, let me describe what this document is. This is a personal income and expenditure budget. So to begin with, I want to say how much money do I have at the beginning of the month. In other words, how much did I bring forward from last month? And then from there, we create an income section where we are going to put the different types of incomes that we have: salary, extra jobs, interest on savings, and depending on what you do, you might have more or less incomes than this. Then we have a line which is going to calculate the total income. So we are going to put a formula here that adds up all these incomes. Then we get to the expenditure, where we list all the expenditure items from house rent, food, transport, clothing, school fees, and other, followed by the total expenses. And then after we get total expenses, we want to know how much money is remaining at the end of the month. So what we do is we put a formula here that calculates the balance brought forward, what we started with at the beginning of the month, plus the total income. Then we subtract our total expenses, and we get this balance brought forward. So at the end of the day, we are going to have income and expenditure budgets for the whole year from January to December. The purpose of this module is to introduce the basic functions in Microsoft Excel. So I'm going to go to sheet number 2. When you create a Microsoft Excel document, the file that you save is called a workbook. In other words, everything that is going to be contained in that document is a workbook. Then the workbook consists of worksheets. A worksheet is like a page. Like in this case, I've got the first sheet, which is sheet number 1. And we can change the names of these sheets by simply right-clicking. Then you say rename, and you can call it whatever you want. Then I've got sheet number 2. If I want to add more sheets, I simply click on this plus, or I can go to the Home tab, and under the Cells group, look for Insert, and then Insert Sheet. then it gives you another sheet. You can also rearrange the order of these sheets. Like in this case, it put sheet 3 just after sheet 1. I can simply click on sheet 3 and drag it and drop it after sheet 2. So you can have many worksheets depending on how complex the document you are creating is. So this bottom area is the workspace where we create our document, whereas the top is where we find the menus or the ribbon. So the ribbon consists of a number of tabs, T-A-B-S. So you'll have the File tab, the Home tab, Insert, Page Layout, Formulas, Data, Review, and View. So the name of the tab gives you a rough idea of the functions that you'll find there. On each tab, the commands are arranged in groups. So you find on the Home tab, you have the Font group, the Alignment group, Number group, Styles, Cells, and Editing. From time to time, you'll hear me say, let's go to the Home tab, and then on the Home tab, look for the Font group, and on the Font group, select the fill color. So when we select a fill color, we put a background on the cell or the cells that are highlighted. Whenever you see an arrow next to a command button, like in this case, it means that there are more options to that command. Like if I click on this arrow, I see the various colors that I can use with that fill command. But if I just clicked on the image itself for the fill color, it will give me the color that is currently there. Like in this case, there is a yellow. That is what is going to be used as a fill color. But if I want more options, I click on the drop down arrow and then I can choose a different color. So as you are moving or hovering over each color, it shows you on your worksheet how it is going to look like. So a spreadsheet is used for managing data which is in table format. So a table is typically made of rows and columns. So a row is like this first row, row number 1, which is horizontal or goes sideways from left to right or side to side. So the rows are numbered from 1 up to tens of thousands. So in other words, your worksheet can be so long or so deep depending on the amount of information that you are managing. Then you have the columns that go up and down. They are labeled A, B, C, D, and when you get to Z, it starts again from AA, AB, until it gets to AZ. From AZ, it starts from BA to BZ until it reaches ZA to ZZ. So you can see that the worksheet can be very, very wide, giving you the ability to create worksheets which can contain data for huge organizations. Where a column intersects or meets with a row, we call that a cell. So in other words, this box is a cell. So the name of the cell is the column letter and the row number. In this case, it will be E6. you can see that the column is highlighted on top here, and the row is also highlighted, so you don't need to guess. You can click anywhere, you can see it's J22. But you also have here, immediately on top of the workspace, what we call a name box. So as you can see, the moment I put my cursor on top of it, it brings up the label name box. So that label name box is what we generally call a screen tip. It helps you to know what a command is and what it can do before you actually click it. So you can hover over any command. You can see that you get different levels of explanation. On some of them, it's just a one word. On others, it's a sentence. And yet others give you a lot more information depending on how much help is needed for that particular function. So the quickest way of knowing where you are is to simply look in this name box. It will tell you that you are in E6. And then you get what is called a formula bar, which shows you the actual contents of E6. So at the moment, it tells us in E6 we have got the word cell. But the reason why it's called a formula bar is because at times we have got an actual mathematical formula. If I were to type a number 35 straight on the keyboard, the display on the worksheet is 35 and the contents in the formula bar is also 35. But below it, I can put a formula, and with a formula, you have to start with an equal sign. So the moment you put an equal sign, Excel knows that you are now typing a formula. So we say equal to 15 plus 20, and I press enter. So I get the same answer, 35. When you come and look at these two cells, you might think they contain the same thing, but they do not contain the same thing. This first cell simply contains the number 35, which was typed in there. But the second cell contains a formula, which is equal to 15 plus 20. But the actual cell itself simply displays the result of that formula. So this is important when you receive a worksheet from somebody else and you see numbers. Don't just rush to change the numbers before checking what is in those cells, because some of them have got formulas that are calculating results based on information found in other cells on the worksheet. We'll be talking about formulas a bit later on as we continue to develop our template, which is on sheet 1. So now let's talk about entering data and editing the contents of a cell. Whenever you put your cursor on a cell and you start typing, whatever you type immediately replaces all the contents of that cell. So you must be very careful when you are handling your keyboard, because sometimes you put your cursor where there is an important formula, then by mistake you lean on the keyboard, say on the space bar, like I just did, or you lean on the delete key, or you can even press even just an A. If for any reason you press enter or tab or one of the arrow keys, then that new item you have entered will actually be saved instead of the old formula which was there. So we need to learn how to correctly edit the contents of a cell. So if you have got a content that say Namibian, and then you leave it as Namibian, but you actually wanted to type Namibian flag. So what you could do the long way and the wrong way is to retype Namibian flag from scratch. But that is completely unnecessary. You can edit or change the contents of the cell in two ways. The first one is to go to the formula bar up here where the contents of the cell are, and then you simply click where you want to add the flag. I press space bar, then I type flag. Then when I'm done, I press enter. Or I can undo so that I go back to Namibian only. And then instead of going up here, you can double click inside the cell itself. So when you double click, you can now see that the cursor is flashing inside, and you can move it by clicking anywhere. Then you can just add your flag. So those are the two ways of editing the contents of your cell. Okay, let me delete this one. Since we said that a worksheet manages data in columns and rows, normally you want to create your table by first putting column headings. So if you go to a particular column, like for example column A, whenever you type something and you press the tab key, you go to the next cell, you type in name, tab, go to the next cell, age, address, so then if these are columns of a particular document, you can then actually start filling in the names, the ages, and the addresses. Then the next thing you must be able to do is to change the size of the column and the size of the row. So for the column, we talk about column width. Because the column is wide, left to right. But for the row, we talk about row height. So the column width is important because if your column is narrow, let me narrow this column, you can see that the word column width, row height, worksheet, workbook, they are still displaying in full, but they appear as if now they are spilling into the column next to the one where we typed them. What is spilling here is just the display, but the actual contents of the cell are found in the column I only. There is nothing in J. So if you're in I, you can see the formula bar shows you the whole word workbook. When you go to J, you see that there is nothing in J. So what you need to do is to adjust the width of this column. The first way is to point your cursor on the boundary between the two columns, I and J. So you can see that when it is over I or over J, it is a bold arrow pointing downwards, but when you put it on the boundary, it becomes a cross which has got two arrows pointing left and right, meaning you can drag this margin to the right to increase the width of I, or to the left to reduce the width of I. So you can just increase the width to the size that you prefer and it changes. But sometimes you have got data at the bottom and you are not very sure about the width of that data. So you use the second method of pointing, getting that cross, and then you simply double click. So when you double click, it automatically adjusts the column to fit the cell which has got the widest contents. So in this case, column width is the widest. That is why it adjusts to accommodate column width. Then when we talk of row height, we are saying how high is this row. Whenever you change the size of a font, Excel automatically readjusts the height of the row to accommodate the size of the text. So if we can go here, say to tabs, and change the size of that font to something bigger. So as you are changing, you can see that my text is getting bigger and the row is also increasing in height. So you can either do that, or you can actually adjust the row height on the left hand side here. You go below the row that you want to change, get the arrow, get the cross, but this time the cross has got arrows pointing up and down. So we can increase the height of this row, which is something that we normally want to do if we have got column headings. We want it to be a bit higher, and then the actual label is at the bottom. It's not very nice for a column heading just to be the same height as the rest of the data. So you can adjust the height by pulling the bottom margin down to wherever you want it to be. You can pull it down or you can pull it up. The last trick I'm going to show you is how to change the column width of more than one column, or the row height of many rows at the same time. So if we see that there are columns which need the same width, we simply highlight those columns. And if there is another one which is not continuous, in other words, you do not want to include E, you simply press down your control key on the keyboard and then you click on the other ones individually. So all these which are highlighted will now be adjusted to the same column width. So all you do is you choose one of the columns, like A for example, then I adjust A to the width that I want, and automatically the rest get the same width. So if I reduce A or reduce C, all of them also reduce. The same thing applies to the row height. You simply come here and you click inside the row numbers, not inside the worksheet. So you drag and highlight the rows that you'd like to adjust the row height. And if you also have another set of rows but which are not continuous, you press down the control key on the keyboard and either draw again another block, or you can simply click on individual rows. Then once you are done, you look for any of the rows, you go below it and you adjust the height. Then you can see that all the rows have been adjusted. So it doesn't matter which of the rows you adjust, it will adjust every one of those rows that have been highlighted. Okay, so I'll be showing you more tricks in Excel as we go on, but I decided to show you these ones just as a start. In the next video, we are now going to start creating this document. So I would like you to play around just like I was doing here, so that you become familiar with the few functions that I have shown you. So I'll see you in the next video.